CSIS 2470 is filmed before a live studio audience.
Well, now that we remember what JavaScript is, let's refresh our memories on some core concepts, namely variables, operators, and arrays. These are fundamental and crucial for all programming languages. So before we get into the advanced JavaScript stuff, we need to make sure we have our memories refreshed about the fundamental, basic JavaScript stuff. Here's a brief overview of the three topics. First, let's start with variables. We know this from algebra. It's just a placeholder. In programming, I like to refer to it as sort of a box that can just hold things. Arrays are just like a variable, but it's a box that can hold multiple things, and we'll get to more examples in a minute. And then operators. We have 4 types of operators, and there's this nice acronym CLAM to help us remember the 4 types of operators. The C stands for comparison, L stands for logic, A stands for assignment, and M stands for mathematical, or you'll often hear them referred to as arithmetic. I like using the M, so we have a nice acronym for mathematic. So here we are, variables in a nutshell. As I mentioned, it's just a box that holds a value. So imagine we have this box here, and it's labeled X, right? We remember in algebra, 2 plus X equals 5. We know that that means X equals 3, right? Well, so that would mean that there's a 3 inside of that box. Well, in our code, we often won't use X. We might, but we're more likely to use something like name. And so we have this name box. I've now opened the box so we can store in it our name, which in this case of our example here is John. Maybe we have another variable called age that's got the value 25 stored in it, and we have another box that's a Boolean value called isStudent, and it's holding the value true. Now there are a variety of ways to declare variables in JavaScript. In the previous course that you took, you probably are familiar with just one of them, which is var, but there are more. A few years ago, let and const were added to the mix, and we're going to go over some examples in the code of the main differences between them. But the short version, var is what we call the execution context scope, and it can be redeclared. And then we have let and const, they're both block scope or block level scope, and let cannot be redeclared, unlike var, which can be. And then const cannot be reassigned. All right, I know that's all a bunch of fancy jargon. We're going to take a look at that and what all of it means in the code in just a minute. Last thing, we can actually declare a variable without using any keywords, and I'll show you the case where we do that in just a moment. To the code. All right, what we're looking at here is just a regular old HTML file, and as you can see on line 6, I've got it connected up to my JavaScript file, which is right here. Before we look at the JavaScript though, let's remember there are 3 different ways you can connect JavaScript to your HTML. One is what you're seeing right there on line 6, which is an external file, an external script file. However, you can also embed it into your code, which we remember looks something like this, where we have a script tag, and then inside of the script tag, we have some JavaScript code. We'll just have an alert for now that says hello. And for now, I'm just going to comment that out right there, which, by the way, the hotkey for that, if you're using Notepad++, is Control-Q. So we have this script here, and we're going to head over to the browser, and I refresh, and there you go. We got a little pop-up that says hello. So way number 1 is line 6 there, which is a separate JavaScript file. Way number 2 is embedded here, which I'm going to delete. And then way number 3, this is just like CSS. You can do inline, embedded, or separate sheet. So we can also do inline. So I can actually just put right here on load, for example, that's just an HTML keyword. And then we can just put JavaScript right in there. Hello again. And now when I run it, once the body loads, that alert will pop up saying hello again. So if I refresh, there we go, hello again. So that's inline, which we're going to delete. We've already deleted the embedded. Now let's look at the separate style sheet. And we'll do one more alert here that says goodbye. And again, when I refresh, you will see, because my style sheet or because my JavaScript is connected, we get this message here. All right, so we remember how to connect our JavaScript to our HTML. Let's take a look at some of these examples we were talking about with the variables. So first off, let's look at just declaring a simple variable. We will call it name, and we'll set its value equal to Jeff. That's me. So what does this mean here? Well, we remember it's context execution, right? What does that even mean? Basically, this is simplifying it, but it's essentially kind of a global variable, right? So if I, for example, have a function here and it's just print stuff, and in here I wanted to say console log name, I have access to that variable, that var name Jeff. I have access to it. So if we go back to the page here, we open up our console, close all this stuff here, make the console a little bit bigger, and refresh. So this print stuff function has access to that variable name. Now we just call it, so print stuff, and then head over here. I've opened up the console here, refresh, and you can see that it printed it no problem. So this execution context basically means wherever you declare that variable, anything that's at that level or inside of that level has access to it. So imagine the whole document is sort of like an invisible set of curly braces. Whoops, that's a parenthesis. It's like an invisible set of curly braces around the whole thing. If you can imagine it, sort of like that. Wherever this is declared, it's in these curly braces. So that means anything inside of those curly braces can get to that, can get to that variable. That's why it works in the function there. I can also access it down here where I can say console.log hello name. And of course, when I refresh, we get hello Jeff. By the way, those curly braces there, you can put curly braces anywhere you want in your code. It doesn't affect anything. It'll just visually block code together. However, it will affect things if you're using let. That when we talk about it being block level scope, then the curly braces matter. So I'm going to delete those curly braces on line 1 and 9. Just imagine that they're there though, because basically the document itself is sort of inside of the curly braces. All right, so let's delete that, and we're going to change this to let. Now that we've set it to let, let's see how it changes things, if at all. We refresh, nothing changed. So what's the difference between var and let? Well, let me show you one difference. If I say var name here, refresh, we're back to using var. And now inside this function, I decide to redeclare name and set it equal to Bob. Then I refresh, and it totally works. And you can see here that the first one prints Bob, the second one does Jeff. I was able to redeclare name. I'm not reassigning this name. I've made a new name on line 5 that is not the same as the name on line 2. If I were using let, you'll see that it still behaves the same way. However, here's where it gets tricky. Let's go back to var, and I'm going to redeclare var in the same scope, right? The same top level curly braces, if you will, the invisible ones that are on line 1 and 10 there. If I do var name on line 2, and then I decide to redeclare name on line 3, refresh, and you'll see that Bob and hello Bob are now both saying Bob and Jeff doesn't exist. What we've done is completely erase the existence of this variable called name and its value, Jeff. We've overwritten it completely, and we now have a new one called name, and we've assigned it Bob. If, however, we tried to do that with let, it will not work the same. We refresh, and we get an error. It says identifier name has already been declared. So you cannot redeclare the variable in the same scope when using let. Hopefully that makes some sense. So that's one difference between let and var. We're going to talk about const in a minute, but you're going to find that const and let function almost identically with one exception, which we'll get to in just a minute. So we're just going to focus on var and let for the moment. Okay, so let's look at another situation here. Let is block level scoped. Let and const are both block level scope. So if, for example, I have in here, let's get rid of this one. If I have in here let x equal 4, 5, whatever, the question is, where is this variable x available? Is it available here? If I want to console that out, is it available here? We'll say number equals x. Is it available there? Just get rid of this name business completely for clarity. So my question to you is, will all of these be able to print out x? Will this one be able to? Will this one be able to? Let's find out. Refresh, and we get this uncaught reference error. X is not defined, and it tells us on line 6. So right here it's saying x isn't defined, but what are you talking about? It's right there. Okay, now if I get rid of these curly braces here for just a minute, just comment them out when I refresh, That one works just fine, but we get another uncaught error on line 9 because this one is not defined, because this let is inside of these curly braces. That's the block that let was defined in, right inside of there. So this cannot access it. Now, if we put these curly braces back on, the problem is that the let, or the const, goes to its nearest parent, if you will, right? The parent of let is line 3's curly braces, right? Lines 3 and 5. That's its parent. And so, yeah, line 2 and 7 curly braces are the grandparent, but it's only scoped to its immediate parent, for the want of a better term. So in other words, if I had another set of curly braces in here, this console X is not even available here, because this is the parent. This line 6, its parent is the 5 and 7 braces, and then its grandparent is the line 3 and 8 braces, and its great grandparent is the line 2 and 9 braces. So you'll see we're going to still get this error here. Refresh, and we still get that error on line 7 is not defined. That's going to be the same thing if we were to use const here. But if I were to use var, you'll notice we get this working just fine on line 7 there. We still get the error out here on line 11. The reason this is that back to that context execution thing, right? It's basically what this context execution means for our purposes, for the sake of this course. You can do more digging if you want to get into the nitty gritty of this. And there's this concept called hoisting we're not going to get into. But the basic idea is var is basically function level. If it's inside of a function, it will work anywhere in that function. If it's outside of the function, any functions that are at the same sibling level, if you will have access to it. So we'll go back up to here for a minute. And if I say var y equals 10, then this var y is available anywhere in this function, because function is a sibling, right? It's essentially a sibling to line 1. And everything down here is also a sibling. So if I were to say, put the y right there, and we'll do a duplicate here, we'll put a y right there, all that will work just fine. You refresh it, and you see we get no errors there, everything printed out, no problem. So let's sum this up. If I'm using var, it will work inside of whatever function it was declared in, regardless of how many curly braces it's nested inside of. But it will only work in that function. If var is declared outside of a function, then all functions that are at the same sibling level as var will also have access to it. Let and const, on the other hand, only work in the immediate set of curly braces that they're inside of. That's block level scope. So that's the main difference. The other thing, as we mentioned earlier, you can't redeclare a let when it's in the same scope. Okay, so what's the difference with const? It's a minor difference, but let's just clear out this function. I'm going to delete the function here because everything we've done so far with let, const works exactly the same with the function and the curly braces and all that stuff. So we're just going to, for the sake of clarity here, we're going to delete all this, and we're going to say const x equals 10, right? I can console.log x, no problem, right? Let's look at that. It prints it out, no problem. If, however, I wanted to change the value of x and set it to 8 and then try to console that out, we'll see what happens. Refresh, and it says assignment to constant variable. I can't do that. It's a constant. You can't change a constant. Whereas if this were let, this would be no problem, right? Refresh, and we'll get both of those out. You can change the value of let or var, either way is fine. You can change the value of either one of those, no problem, right? So refresh it, and we can prove that, and it stays the same. Const is short for constant, right? That's why you can't change it. It's a constant. Now, you will see a lot of people use const in ways which, in my opinion, you shouldn't be. My opinion, in my dogma, whatever, my paradigm is use const when it's a constant. Like, for example, maybe you're programming a game and you wanted to have a gravity constant, right? What is it, 9.8 feet per second squared? I don't know what gravity is, but it's, whatever, const equals 9.8, right? And you just leave it at that. Maybe you have a constant for pi, right? Pi equals 3.14 or however many decimals you want to go out, because that's a number that's never going to change. You're never going to mess with it. You're never going to manipulate it. That's how I use const. There are some tricky things when it comes to arrays with const. We'll look at that another day when we get deeper into advanced array stuff. But for now, these are the basics for const, let, and var. The last example we're going to look at is when there's no keyword. Right now, if I remove this keyword, believe it or not, everything works just fine. Okay. Now, don't get in the habit of doing that. There are some quirky things that can happen when you do that. Just don't mess with that. Okay. That aside, here is a case where it's fine, and that's in a loop. For x equals 0, x is less than 10, and we'll do x plus plus, and we'll just console.log x. Refresh that, and we'll get the number 0 through 9 printed out in the console right there, right? That's totally fine. Now, you can do var x like that, and you can do let x like that, and I refresh, and you'll see it works. But what's going to happen if I do const? If you guess that I'm going to get an error, you are correct, because sure, I can set x to 0, but the moment I try to change it by iterating the loop, we're now trying to change a constant. That's no good. However, this is totally valid, right? So that is how I write all of my loops. There we go. That's variables in a nutshell. Let's take a look now at arrays. Arrays are closer to these little pill containers, right? That you have one container, but it has several slots in it. So if we were to just simply overwrite things a little bit there, and now we have this pill container is the variable x, and we have the 0th slot, the 1th slot, the 2th slot, the 3rd slot, and you're going to hear me use that verbiage over and over again. Get used to it. And the reason I say that is because if I say the first slot, well, that's actually the 0th slot, right? If you're to count 1, 2, 3, the first one, the second one, the third one, well, then that would be 0 is the first place, 1 is the second place. So I don't like to say first when I'm referring to this one right here that has the 1 on it, because that's technically not the first slot, it's the second slot. So you will hear me say it this way: the 0th, the 1th, 2th, 3th, 4th, 5th, 6th. And notice how similar 6th sounds to 6th. They are different, and I'm emphasizing it. And so if you think it sounds weird, sorry, just get used to it, right? So that last one is the 6th slot, but is the 7th position in the array. But its index is 6, and so it's the 6th element, how I refer to that. So, but this is a simple array, and let's say, for example, that this array was going to hold some fruits. So we'll rename it to fruits rather than x, and if I were to run that line of code right there, let fruits equal apple, banana, pear, then this is what would happen in the array. It would fill those up with those three things. If I were to run, say, this line of code where I say fruits push orange, then it will put orange in the next available slot, which in this case is the 3rd spot. So I run that and we get that. If I wanted to console out a particular fruit, we call the array fruits bracket 0, which is the 0th spot in the element, and that will give us the apple. To the code. Let's take a look at this in the code really quick. Let's just make an array. We'll call it let metal equal. And if I just leave it like that, we just have an empty array, right? But let's just put Metallica and Megadeth. Oh, that's supposed to be a comma there. And Maiden, the 3 M's of metal, right? Now, before I do anything else, if I head over to the console here and refresh, nothing happens because I haven't said to print anything out. But if I were to type metal right here, you'll see it shows me the value right there. I can expand it, and this is showing me that the 0th element of that array is Metallica, the 1th element is Megadeth, and the 2th element is Maiden. If I wanted to push in here, if I wanted to add something to it, I could say metal.push, and then we put our band in there. Another metal band that starts with M. I guess we can go with Madonna. Come on, that's hilarious. Now if I run this, I'll refresh. And over here I can type metal again. And now you can see Madonna has been added to the 4th place, but the 3rd element, right? If I want to pick out a particular element, let's say I want to console dot the metal bracket 1, pause for a minute and think, what will that print out? And if you guessed Megadeth, you would be correct. And if I wanted to print, I can just do it right here in the console too. I can just say metal bracket 4, and what will that print? That will give me an error because there is no 4 right? The array is length 4, but they're only 3 is the highest index. So if I do metal 3, that should give me Madonna, right? And in the code here, I can do it in the code or in the console directly. We'll go console log metal.length and refresh, and this will just give me the number of how many things are in the array. And we get the number 4, right? So again, this is very basic stuff here. We will get more advanced with arrays as we move forward in the course, but I just want to remind us all some of the beginning basics here. So let's head back to the presentation mode, PowerPoint slide, and take a look at our final topic for the day, which is operators.